The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador James Miller stood from his seat. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes held a steely determination that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their ornate chairs. 50 years of diplomatic talks, negotiations, and what humans called getting nowhere slowly had led to this moment. The massive chamber, with its soaring crystal dome and floating platforms, had witnessed countless debates and decisions over the millennia. But today was different. Miller cleared his throat, his voice carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics of the chamber. Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today with humanity's final statement. The council leader, a tall being with silvery skin, leaned forward. Surely, Ambassador Miller, we can continue our productive discussions. Productive. Miller's laugh held no humor. Let's review what your idea of productive has been. He activated a holographic display, showing trade statistics, technology exchange rates, and expansion permits. For 50 years, humanity has played by your rules. We've filled out your forms in triplicate, waited for your committees to deliberate, and accepted your restrictions. The data floating in the air told a clear story. Human colonies were restricted to a tiny fraction of available systems, while other younger species were granted vast territories. Trade tariffs on human goods were triple the galactic average. Technology sharing was a one-way street, with humanity expected to share innovations while receiving little in return. When we joined this council, Miller continued, we were told it was a partnership of equals. Instead, we found ourselves in a system designed to contain and control us. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. We noticed how you encouraged our potential allies to distance themselves, how our trade routes mysteriously became unsafe for transport, how our scientific breakthroughs were classified as potentially destabilizing. The council chamber's environmental systems might have been perfect, but several representatives were sweating now. They had assumed humans would continue to tolerate the situation, too invested in galactic society to risk isolation. They had assumed wrong. Therefore, Miller's voice took on a formal tone. By the authority vested in me by the United Earth Government, I hereby announce humanity's complete withdrawal from all galactic treaties, agreements, and obligations. He placed a small device on his podium, projecting the official declaration in all major galactic languages. The chamber erupted in chaos. The council leader's voice boomed over the commotion. Ambassador Miller, this is unprecedented. The economic consequences alone will be yours to deal with. Miller cut in smoothly. We've already begun the withdrawal process. All human ships are returning to Sol system. All human enterprises in council space are being liquidated or relocated. All diplomatic missions are being recalled. A reptilian representative stood up, voice hissing with barely contained panic. You cannot just walk away. The treaties you never intended to honor. Miller smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're done playing your games. Humanity is leaving the table. As Miller turned to leave, the council leader made one last attempt. The council will not look favorably on this action, Ambassador. There will be consequences. Miller stopped at the chamber's entrance and turned back. No, there won't be. Because you never understood what you were dealing with. You saw us as children to be managed, primitives to be controlled. You never asked yourselves why we accepted your restrictions so easily. His smile turned predatory. You never wondered what we weren't showing you. With those words hanging in the air, Ambassador James Miller walked out of the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. Behind him, the representatives of 1,000 worlds sat in stunned silence, beginning to realize that their carefully maintained system of control was about to crumble. In orbit above the Council world, human ships were already preparing for departure. Within 24 hours, humanity would vanish behind the boundaries of their home system, leaving the galaxy to deal with the consequences of its own arrogance. The talks had failed. Humanity was walking away. and the galaxy was about to learn just how badly they had miscalculated. The first sign that humanity was serious came 3 days after Ambassador Miller's departure. The massive human trade hub in the Centauri sector, normally bustling with thousands of ships, fell silent. Supply ships turned back mid-route. Commercial vessels disappeared from their regular paths. Communication channels went dark one by one. Tom Parker, owner of the last human restaurant in the Proxima trading station, served his final customer. The alien merchant, a regular for 15 years, watched in disbelief as Parker packed away his prized collection of Earth spices. "You can't really be leaving," the merchant said, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "Your noodle soup is the only thing that makes these trade runs bearable." Parker just smiled, carefully wrapping his grandmother's old wok. Orders are orders. Every human enterprise, down to the smallest food cart, is going home. He paused, looking around his restaurant one last time. "You folks never did figure out how to make proper chili sauce anyway." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human businesses closed their doors. Research facilities packed up their equipment. Entertainment venues went dark. The galaxy was learning just how deeply humanity had integrated into their society. In the military sector, the withdrawal was even more dramatic. The human fleet moved with precision that caught many observers off guard. Patrol routes were abandoned. Joint bases were evacuated. Defense stations were stripped of human personnel and technology. Admiral Laura Reed stood on the bridge of the HSS Titan, watching as the last human ships pulled away from the Orion defense line. For decades, humanity had helped guard this strategic sector against pirates and hostile entities. Now, the alien commanders were about to discover just how much they had relied on human military capabilities. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving urgent requests from Central Command. They're demanding to know who will cover our patrol routes." Reed's expression remained neutral. "Send them the standard response. All inquiries should be directed to the automated message system at Sol." The automated message system was a masterpiece of diplomatic passive-aggressiveness. It politely informed all callers that humanity was currently unavailable for communication, and no, there wasn't an estimated date for their return. In the economic sector, the impact was immediate and severe. Human goods vanished from markets overnight. Earth's unique products, everything from their famous coffee to their advanced quantum processors, became impossible to find. Prices skyrocketed as aliens realized just how many alien products had actually relied on human components or technology. The Galactic Stock Exchange recorded its worst day in 3 centuries. Companies that had built their business models around human trade saw their values plummet. Insurance rates for shipping tripled as human protection fleets withdrew from major trade routes. But it was the silence that truly unnerved them. Humanity had always been noisy. Their communication channels buzzed constantly with music, entertainment, business deals, and casual chatter. Their ships broadcasted their positions proudly. Their diplomats were always ready to talk. Now there was nothing. Long-range sensors showed massive movement toward the Sol system. Hundreds, then thousands of human ships and stations relocated behind the boundary of their home territory. But no one answered hails. No one explained. No one negotiated. In the council archives, the head archivist made a disturbing discovery. They had extensive files on human military capabilities, technology, and resources, but all of it was based on what humans had openly shared or demonstrated. There were no secret surveillance reports, no deep intelligence findings, no hidden observations. For 50 years, they had only seen what humanity had chosen to show them. The archivist's report sent shockwaves through the council leadership. They had assumed their intelligence services had penetrated human security. They had assumed they knew humanity's true capabilities. They had assumed they held the upper hand. As the last human ships disappeared into Sol space, those assumptions were crumbling. The galaxy was starting to realize that the real question wasn't what they would do without humanity. The real question was what humanity had been doing all along that they hadn't been allowed to see. The first reports came from routine cargo scanners at the edge of Sol space, a strange energy reading, unlike anything in galactic databases. Within hours, similar readings appeared at every approach vector to the human system. By the end of the day, Sol was completely encased in what observers would later call the Shield. Captain Robert Mason of the alien merchant vessel Star Wanderer was among the first to encounter it. His ship, loaded with luxury goods he hoped to offload despite the human withdrawal, hit what felt like an invisible wall. The barrier shimmered slightly at the impact, rippling with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Full scan, he ordered his science officer. The results made no sense. The barrier wasn't solid, wasn't energy, wasn't anything their sensors could properly categorize. It simply was. The Star Wanderer wasn't alone. Dozens of ships gathered at the boundary, running tests and trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Research vessels arrived, their crews excited at the prospect of studying new technology. Military scouts kept their distance, documenting everything. None of them got through. Inside Earth's Orbital Defense Command, General Alice Wright watched the gathering ships on her monitor. "Looks like we've got their attention," she commented to her staff. The Shield, humanity's greatest secret project, was performing exactly as designed. 50 years of seemingly submissive acceptance of galactic restrictions had given humanity the cover they needed. While the Council thought they were controlling human expansion, Earth's scientists had been busy. The Shield was just the visible part of their achievements. Alien scientists tried everything they could think of. They'd fired standard scanning beams. The Shield absorbed them without a trace. They launched probe drones. The machines disappeared at the barrier and never returned. They attempted to slip through with stealth technology. The Shield didn't even notice their efforts. "They're getting frustrated," Wright's deputy noted, watching another alien ship's failed attempt. The Galactic Military Command just arrived with a test fleet. Wright nodded calmly. "Let them try. That's why we built in the light show." The light show was a deliberate design feature. Whenever something hit the Shield with significant force, it would ripple with spectacular, impossible colors. The effect was purely cosmetic. The barrier would work just fine without it, but the psychological impact was worth the extra effort. The alien test fleet launched their first salvo. Standard energy weapons splashed harmlessly against the Shield, creating a dazzling display that could be seen from 3 systems away. Kinetic weapons simply vanished on contact. Even their most advanced weaponry produced nothing more than a prettier light show. Inside the Shield, human ships moved freely, their special transponders allowing them passage through frequencies the aliens couldn't even detect. The barrier was selective, another feature that baffled outside observers. On Earth, the Global Defense Council received regular updates on the alien attempts to breach or understand the Shield. Each failed attempt was categorized and analyzed, helping to refine the technology further. "They're bringing in their top scientists," an analyst reported, "setting up permanent research stations at the boundary. At least 3 alien races have declared studying the Shield their top priority." The council members shared knowing looks. Let the aliens study it. Let them waste resources trying to understand it. The Shield wasn't just a barrier, it was a message. Humanity hadn't been helpless. They hadn't been technologically inferior. They had simply been patient. As days turned to weeks, the Shield became the galaxy's greatest mystery. Theories spread about how humans had developed such technology without anyone noticing. Fears grew about what other advances they might have kept hidden. General Wright stood at her command center window, watching Earth's sunset through the faint shimmer of the Shield. "Send the daily status report to command," she ordered. "Shield functioning at optimal levels. All sectors secure. No penetration attempts successful." She paused, then allowed herself a small smile. "Add a note. Phase 1 complete. Ready to begin Phase 2 on order." The Shield stood as humanity's declaration of independence, a barrier between them and a galaxy that had tried to contain them. But for those who knew the full plan, it was just the beginning. Behind the shield, humanity was preparing for what came next. The trading floor of the Greater Orion Exchange descended into chaos as another major corporation declared bankruptcy. The company had built its entire business model around distributing human medical technology. Now, with no access to Earth's supplies, their stock was worthless. Marcus Thompson, watching from his office on New Mars Colony, switched off the financial feed with a tired gesture. As Earth's former chief economic advisor to the Galactic Council, he had warned them this might happen. They hadn't listened. "Sir," his AI assistant chimed, "the latest reports are in. 3 more systems have entered economic emergency status. The Pleiades Banking Consortium is requesting emergency stabilization measures." Thompson leaned back in his chair, looking out at the massive shield that now protected all human space. How many systems are affected now? 217 at last count. The number grows hourly. The galactic economy had been more dependent on human goods and services than anyone had realized. It wasn't just the obvious things like Earth's famous luxury items or their advanced medical technology. Humanity's influence had spread into every sector, often invisibly. On the frontier world of Haven, Governor Bill West received yet another desperate petition. This one was from a coalition of farming worlds that had relied on human agricultural methods and equipment. "They're offering preferential trade rights," West noted, scanning the document. "Access to restricted territories, even seats on their planetary councils." He set the petition aside with dozens of others. "Send the standard response." The standard response was simple. All negotiations must go through proper channels. The proper channels, of course, were currently silent. In military sectors, the situation was equally dire. Pirates and raiders, long held in check by human patrol fleets, were growing bold. The alien races scrambled to cover the security gaps left by humanity's withdrawal, only to discover how much they had relied on human military technology. Admiral Jack Stone reviewed the intelligence reports from outside human space. "Another raid on the Centauri trade routes," he noted. "Third one this week. The Council's patrols can't seem to handle even basic security without our support." His aide nodded. "They're using our old patrol routes, but they don't have our detection systems. The pirates know all the blind spots now." The political fallout was even more severe. Smaller species, seeing how the Council had mishandled relations with humanity, began questioning their own allegiances. The Council's authority, once absolute, was crumbling. In the Council chamber itself, the mood was grim. The emergency session had been running for days as representatives argued over how to handle the crisis. "The Arcturus Federation is threatening to withdraw," one member reported. "They say if the Council couldn't treat humanity fairly, they can't trust us to protect their interests either." Another member stood. "The research Concordat is in uproar. Half their ongoing projects relied on human scientific collaboration. Years of work, worthless now." The Council leader tried to maintain order, but the damage was spreading. Species that had been traditional rivals of humanity were finding themselves isolated as former trading partners sought new alliances. Back on Earth, President Diana Ross reviewed the latest intelligence briefings. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about interconnected economies and the danger of underestimating trading partners. "They thought they were containing us," she mused to her advisors. "Instead, they became dependent on us. And now they're paying the price," her security chief finished. "The question is, how long do we let this continue?" Ross studied the holographic display showing the spreading economic and political crisis. "As long as necessary. They need to understand that humanity won't be controlled or manipulated. We're not their servants or their children." Outside human space, the crisis continued to deepen. Trade routes collapsed. Security arrangements failed. Political alliances fractured. The careful order the Council had maintained for millennia was unraveling. And behind their shield, humanity watched and waited, knowing that every passing day made their position stronger. The galaxy was learning that you couldn't just remove humanity from the equation without consequences. The ripples were becoming waves, and the waves would soon become a flood that would reshape the galaxy forever. Inside the Council's most secure data vault, Chief Analyst Mark Wilson replayed the security footage for the 20th time. The scene showed a routine maintenance operation at a human research facility from 2 years ago, except there was nothing routine about it. "Look there," he pointed to his senior staff. "That basic power core they're installing. It's operating on principles we've never seen before. Energy readings that should be impossible." He paused the footage. And this was in their public facility, their lowest security installation. The implications were staggering. For decades, the Council had believed they were monitoring all significant human technological development. Now they were discovering just how wrong they had been. In another sector, a military probe had finally managed to recover fragments of data from an abandoned human outpost. Commander Rachel Foster reviewed the findings with growing unease. "These are weapons designs," she announced to the emergency session, "but not the ones we knew about. These make our most advanced systems look primitive." She brought up the technical specifications, and based on the file dates, they had this capability 20 years ago. The Council chamber erupted in worried murmurs. If humans had this level of military technology so long ago, what did they have now? But the revelations kept coming. A data analyst discovered that human AIs had been far more advanced than they had claimed. The simple trading algorithms they used in galactic markets had actually been quantum-based superintelligences, operating so subtly that no one had noticed their true nature. A research team studying human medical technology found evidence of breakthrough developments in genetic engineering, cellular regeneration, and life extension. Technologies that humans had claimed were still in early development had actually been perfected years ago. In the Council's central archive, a junior clerk made perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. Hidden in routine trade reports and diplomatic messages was evidence of a systematic Council plan to contain human expansion. The plan had been in place since humanity's first contact. They knew, the Council leader realized, reading the old documents, they must have known what we were doing from the beginning, and they played along, letting us think we were in control. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity hadn't been struggling under Council restrictions. They had been using them as cover. Every limitation, every regulation, every barrier had given them an excuse to hide their true capabilities. On a secure Council station, Dr. Lisa Hammond led the team analyzing recovered human research data. Each new discovery added to their growing sense of unease. "Their work in dimensional physics is beyond anything we imagined," she reported. "The shield isn't just a barrier, it's bending space itself. And these energy signatures," she shook her head, "they've mastered principles we haven't even discovered yet." The Council's military command was facing similar revelations. General Alan Reed, reviewing decades of human military exercises, saw the pattern. Every war game, every joint operation, he explained to his staff, they were holding back. Dramatically holding back. What we thought was their full capability was probably less than 10% of what they could actually do. In the Council's economic division, analysts were piecing together another aspect of human deception. Their seemingly simple trade practices had been part of a complex economic web deliberately designed to create dependency while appearing harmless. They weren't just trading, the chief economist realized. They were positioning themselves so their withdrawal would cause maximum disruption, and we helped them do it. As the full scope of human capability became clear, panic began to spread through the Council leadership. They had based all their plans, all their policies, on a fundamental misunderstanding of what humanity was capable of. In her private chamber, the Council leader reviewed the latest reports. The humans hadn't just fooled them. They had orchestrated the entire situation. Every concession, every submission, every apparent weakness had been carefully calculated. And now, behind their impenetrable shield, humanity had the power to reshape the galaxy however they chose. The only question was, what would they do with it? The revelation was complete. The galaxy had severely underestimated humanity, and now they could only wait to discover the price of their mistake. The first major rebellion started in the Proxima Trade Federation. Merchant guilds, facing financial ruin without human trade, turned against their council-appointed leaders. Similar uprisings spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Director Peter Banks watched from his monitoring station as another government fell. Fourth one this week, he noted to his staff. The Arcturus Confederation just voted to declare independence from council authority. The pattern was becoming clear. Worlds and systems that had built their prosperity on human cooperation were rejecting council control. The carefully maintained power structure that had governed galactic society for millennia was crumbling. In the Orion sector, Governor Frank Cooper faced an angry crowd of business leaders. Their trade alliance, once the most prosperous in the sector, was falling apart. Without human mediation, half our trade disputes have turned violent. One merchant shouted, "The council's arbitration system is useless." Cooper knew they were right. Humans had played a crucial role in maintaining peace between competing interests. Their reputation for fair dealing had made them the galaxy's preferred mediators. Now, without them, old rivalries were flaring up unchecked. On the council capital world, riots broke out as news spread of yet another economic collapse. The council's emergency response teams struggled to maintain order. "We've lost control of the outer sectors," reported Security Chief Ana Martinez. "Local authorities are ignoring council directives. Some are actively declaring support for human independence." The council's influence was waning faster than anyone had predicted. Species that had been historical enemies of humanity were finding themselves isolated as former allies sought new arrangements. In military command centers across council space, the situation was equally dire. Commander David Wilson reviewed the latest defense reports with growing concern. "Another border incident," he announced to his staff. "Without human peacekeeping forces, the militant factions are getting bold. Our remaining fleets can't be everywhere at once." The military balance of power was shifting dramatically. For decades, the council had relied on human forces to handle the most dangerous assignments. Now those tasks fell to less capable units, with predictable results. In the diplomatic sector, new alliances were forming rapidly. Ambassador Richard Turner observed the changing landscape with professional interest. "3 more systems have formally requested direct negotiations with Earth," he noted. "They're bypassing council authority completely, offering independent treaties." The council's role as the central authority for galactic diplomacy was eroding. Species that had never dared to act independently were now seeking their own paths, inspired by humanity's example. On a frontier world, colony leader Emily Foster dealt with yet another refugee crisis. Political upheaval was displacing millions as systems realigned themselves. "They're fleeing council authority," she explained to her staff. "Every world that depended on human trade or protection is questioning their loyalties now." The refugee streams told their own story. People were voting with their feet, moving to systems they believed would have better relations with humanity when contact was restored. In the council chamber itself, the atmosphere was tense. Another vote of no confidence had failed, but the margins were getting narrower. "We can't maintain control," one member admitted privately. "Without human support, the whole system is coming apart." The council had built its power on careful balance, playing species against each other while maintaining overall control. Humanity's withdrawal had shattered that balance beyond repair. Back on Earth, strategic analyst Mike Roberts presented his latest assessment to the Defense Council. "The power shift is accelerating," he reported. "The Council's authority is collapsing faster than even our most optimistic projections suggested. New power blocks are forming, centered around potential human allies." President Ross studied the data carefully. The galaxy was reorganizing itself, and humanity was the catalyst. Every system, every species was positioning itself for the new reality. A galaxy where humanity could no longer be ignored or controlled. "They thought their power was absolute," she mused. "They never understood that real power comes from cooperation and mutual benefit, not control and restriction." The shift was undeniable now. The old order was falling, and a new one was emerging. And at its center was the species the Council had tried so hard to contain. Humanity, still silent behind their shield, watching as the galaxy transformed itself around their absence. The message arrived exactly 100 days after humanity's withdrawal. Simple, direct, and broadcast on all frequencies. Earth will receive diplomatic delegations. The shield rippled, creating a single opening just large enough for authorized ships to pass through. The coordinates for the diplomatic station were attached to the message, along with strict protocols for approaching. Ambassador James Miller, the same man who had walked out of the council chamber, stood at the reception area of humanity's new diplomatic station. The first representatives were arriving, and the scene couldn't have been more different from the old council protocols. No special privileges. Miller instructed his staff. Every delegation gets treated exactly the same, regardless of their former status or power. The station itself made a statement. Built with previously hidden human technology, it demonstrated capabilities that left the arriving diplomats in awe. The message was clear. Humanity had been holding back. The first meeting set the tone. The Council's senior representative tried to take control of the proceedings, falling back on centuries of diplomatic tradition. "The Council proposes," he began. "The Council proposes nothing," Miller interrupted calmly. "You're here to listen, not to propose. Those days are over." President Ross addressed the assembled delegations via hologram, her image crystal clear despite the distances involved. Another display of human technological superiority. "Humanity is willing to return to galactic society," she announced, "but on new terms. Our terms." The terms were straightforward but revolutionary. No more restrictions on human expansion. No more technology monitoring. No more unfair trade practices. Humanity would participate as a full and equal partner, or not at all. "These are outrageous demands," one council member protested. Miller smiled. "They're not demands. They're statements of fact. We've demonstrated what happens when humanity walks away. Would you like us to demonstrate it again?" In the station's monitoring center, Director Kate Anderson watched the reactions. Some delegations were already signaling acceptance. Others seemed shell-shocked by humanity's newfound assertiveness. "Third group from the Outer Rim just pledged support," she reported. "They're officially breaking from council authority." The balance of power had shifted permanently. The council's authority, already crumbling, couldn't survive in its current form. Too many species had seen the benefits of dealing with humanity directly. Commander John Howard oversaw security for the negotiations. His ships, now openly displaying their full capabilities, ensured the talks proceeded peacefully. "Another council warship just arrived in the system," his deputy reported. Howard nodded. "Let them watch. They need to understand the new reality." That new reality was becoming clearer by the hour. Humanity wasn't just rejoining galactic society. They were reshaping it. The old hierarchies were dissolving, replaced by a more equitable system. "We're not interested in domination," President Ross explained to the delegations. "We want cooperation. Real cooperation, not the facade of the past 50 years. The evidence of human capabilities was impossible to ignore. The shield, the advanced technology, the economic influence. Humanity had held these cards all along, waiting for the right moment to play them. In the final session, Miller presented the framework for the new galactic order. No more central council control. No more artificial restrictions. A genuine partnership of species, with Earth as a leading member, but not a dictator. "The galaxy is changing," he told the assembled representatives. "You can change with it, or you can become irrelevant. The choice is yours." One by one, the delegations signed the new agreements. Even the council representatives, faced with the collapse of their authority, eventually conceded. As the last signatures were recorded, President Ross made a final appearance. "Today marks a new chapter in galactic history," she declared. "Not because humanity has seized power, but because we've shown there's a better way forward. Together, The shield began to lower, section by section. Human ships resumed their routes. Freight started flowing again. But everything was different now. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity hadn't needed to conquer or dominate. They had simply needed to walk away, to let the galaxy understand what it had lost. And in doing so, they had changed everything. The talks hadn't failed after all. They had simply needed to start over, with everyone finally understanding the truth. Humanity had never been the student in galactic society. They had been the teacher all along.